I so get tired of pointing out that our economic system is a fraud. Jerome Powell, the chair of the Feds, yesterday went ahead and increased interest rates by another 0.25 percentage points. Okay? Now, the idea is they want to force people to spend their money on interest instead of spending their money on products. The idea being it reduces the amount of products and services you buy and forces the corporations to drop their prices. In other words, they want to inflict pain on you, remove whatever excess cash you have, not put it in the bank or anywhere else, but then allow the corporatocracy, for those who are still willing to pay, to still collect on those higher prices. Understand the scam. The scam is this. They won't tell the corporatocracy, stop stealing the people's money with this inflationary costing of your products, irrespective of there being demand or not, or rather, shortages or not. That's the magic here. I want you to listen to this, and then we'll take it on the other side.
The Federal Reserve just announced another rate hike, moving the target rate up by 0.25 percentage point, making the new range 4.75 to 5%. Jerome Powell is trying to thread the needle between fighting inflation and not further rocking the banking system. Joining me now is NBC News business and data reporter Brian Chung. It's a hard needle to thread.
Really tough.
So this 0.25 point rate hike, is this going to be the end? What are we feeling? What are we thinking?
Well, I mean, for right now, it seems like the Federal Reserve is saying we're going to watch how the data unfolds, but they did release economic projections that show where rates could go in the future, and it's basically forecasting one more 25 basis point hike by the end of the year. Now, for what it's worth, this was an interesting meeting because prior to all the banking issues, the story was inflation was high, make interest rates higher so that they can get inflation down, right? We're all feeling that at the store. But the issue is that one of the dominoes to fall that led to Silicon Valley Bank's collapse was higher interest rates. It wasn't the only reason. It was mismanagement.
They're making some bad bets as well.
Mismanagement on where interest rates would go, but that was partially behind that. So the Federal Reserve decided to go with the smallest rate hike it can do, which is 0.25 point in today's meeting. But whether or not they continue to do so in the future, the Fed Chairman Jay Powell was saying in the press conference, it's really going to depend on how. So he says
by the end of the year, another 0.25 point. There are multiple meetings between now and the end of the year. So that could mean that. It's going to flatten out.
Well, again, I think the expectation is that at some point later this year, they will stop the interest rate hikes. And, the Fed chairman was saying in the press conference, look, we're not talking about cutting rates anytime this year, but all of this depends on how all of this unfolds. We don't know whether or not inflation is going to get back down to their 2% target anytime soon. And we don't know whether or not the bleeding from these banking issues has stopped. And that's a reason why the Fed
is there another way to get inflation down other than rate hikes? Could it just be supply chain issues? Are there other variables here that could organically lower inflation if Jerome Powell doesn't continue to get involved?
Well, it's housing. The biggest contributor to inflation right now is housing, the cost of putting a roof over your head, whether through a mortgage or through rent payments. And the story, though, is that the government data is showing it's still very much pressured in terms of high inflation being partly to blame from these high housing costs. But if you look at more high frequency measures of how much we're paying for homes and also for rent, it actually ends up showing you that drops were happening effectively as of the end of last year. It's just the government data has been a little slow to pick that up. So if the government data picks that up closer to the summer, maybe inflation does come down.
Here is what I want folks to understand. I really want you to understand this. We can have as much money in the markets and we won't get inflation if we have enough products for that market, that amount of cash in the market. And we have not really had per se a shortage. Look around the country. There are empty homes all over. We have a huge homeless population, but the prices of homes are high. Why? Because there are groups of people that control many homes in many subdivisions that they buy up when they were cheap, and they decide when to rent them out to maximize their profit. Same applies to any product that you buy. Look at the profit ranges that you have in corporations today. That excess profit that you see them getting when they come on Wall Street and they're happy, record profits. Every time you see record profits, look at your poor neighbor. Look at your neighbor who can't afford to send their kids to college. Look at your neighbor who can't afford to buy the milk. Look at your neighbor who is going to the food bank. You know why they're going there? Because that extra cash that they would have otherwise had is in the profit. It's in the hands of those rich people who are clamoring about how great their businesses are doing because of inflation, because they simply raise the prices, not because there are shortages. And now this farce of an interview says, oh, rents are high. That's really what's causing inflation. They are given every possible reason why there is inflation except for the real reason. Corporate greed, corporate incompetence, corporate selfishness, and unpatriotic behavior by corporations. What do I mean? Well, if you build all your products overseas, including your microprocessors, most of our most expensive or most intricate, the most intricate microprocessors are made in Taiwan, a small island that China claims and one day may invade and put us all in trouble. Why? Because we didn't want to pay the American worker to build these products. And we say, why do we support policies like that? Well, you know what? Republicans, who many of you support, neoliberals, who many of you support, are the ones who push these types of policies that ultimately hurt us. We have to learn. We have to do better. We have to remember that the supply chain problem didn't have to happen. It happened because of corporate ineptitude, greed, and much more. They don't have much upstairs. They know how to play the numbers that's on basic arithmetic. But anything algorithmic, anything differential, everything integral, they don't understand. Please, let's go ahead and let these folks know that, when they talk about take our country back, we need to take our economy back. We need to not take our economy back because we never really had it. We need to own our own economy. We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead, number 1, subscribe to our channel, and number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.